Hello everyone, this is another video. Welcome to my videos. So for quite some time I have been giving some insightful note on the topic given on compulsory book of class 11, and I hope I'm helping you out. So if you like the video, don't forget to share with your friends. So today in this video I'm going to talk about the selfish giant, and the story is written by Irish writer Oscar Wilde. And in this story we see the garden, we see children, and we see the attachment between the garden and children, and we see personification of inanimate object, and there's the giant. So it's very interesting one, and I'm first going to read out the summary, and I have got this summary on the website litcharts.com. And after that I will be sharing some answers from the questions given on the book. So I hope you will find it insightful. So here I go with the summary of the story, The Selfish Giant. Once there was a selfish giant. The giant has a beautiful garden full of green grass, trees and flowers. As he has been to visit his friend for 7 years, the Cornish Ogre, the children enjoy playing in the garden. But when he returns after 7 years, he sends the children away and keeps the garden closed up. As a result, all the seasons except winter refuse to grace the giant's garden, and so only winter weather with frost, snow and wind prevails. When each passing day, the giant anxiety grows for his garden, until one day he wakes up in the morning to hear the laughter of the children and to see the touch of spring in his garden. He is very much happy and runs outside to play with the children, who enters through a small hole in the fence. In the farthest corner of garden, he sees one small boy blinded by his own tears of frustration because he cannot climb a tall tree. Unlike the other children, the boy hugs and kisses the giant for helping him to climb the tree. The spring prevails everywhere. Much to the giant's sadness, the small boy who kissed him never appears again. The giant grows very old and weak in the presence of the happy children sharing his garden space. When the giant is nearing the end of his days, the small children comes to his garden again. The giant is angry when he notices that the boy has imprints of 2 nails on his hands and feet. He was wounded completely, but the boy tells him not to be upset because they are wounds of love, and he comes to take the giant to heaven. Shortly after this conversation with that child, the giant dies happily, and his body is found lying under the tree covered in blossoms. The children found the dead giant under that tree. So the story has a beautiful message. We should not be selfish. If we learn and if we allow ourselves to share a bit with others, then we can be the happiest most, and every good thing can fall into our life if we don't be selfish. So that's the message delivered by the story, Selfish Giant. Alright, now time for the question answer. The first question is, where did the children used to play? The children used to play in giant's garden. What did the snow and the frost do to the garden? The snow covered the grass with its great white cloak, and the frost painted all the trees silver. Then they invited the north wind to stay with them. What did the giant hear when he was lying awake in bed? The giant heard some lovely music, and thus the sound came from children's play. Why do you think spring season never came to the giant's garden? I think spring season never came to the giant's garden because he didn't permit the children to play in that garden. How did the giant realize his mistake? He realized his mistake as the children stopped visiting the garden, and the garden never experienced the spring season. And later on, when they trespassed in the garden started being vibrant again. So spring visited again with the presence of children. So that's how he learned his mistake. So now there's the other question, and the question is, when the little child smiled at the giant and said to him, "You let me play once your garden. Today you shall come with me to my garden, which is paradise. Shortly after, the happy giant dies. What is the coincidence of this event? When the giant was very old and weak, he could not play with the children anymore. He sat in his armchair and watched the children playing. One winter morning, the little child whom he once helped to climb the tree, appeared and offered him a never-ending and peaceful life in his garden, that is heaven. At the same time, the giant died. Thus, the occurrence of a child's offer to eternal life in heaven and the death of the giant is the coincidence. However, from the religious point of view, the appearance of the child with prints of nails on the palms of the hand and feet and the biological death of the giant have a close association. The child is a god and he is taking the giant in eternal world, that's heaven. So it can be regarded, the story can be regarded as a fairy tale. Flowers, seasons, frost, snow, wind, hail, one of the trees to reinforce the story writer's moral vision. The flowers are personified when one of them begins to bloom, then sees there are no children in the garden and goes back to sleep. The variety of personification continues with the happiness of snow and frost as the garden lacks the spring season and they invite the north wind to the garden. So the wind is personified when it says with delight that they must ask the hall to visit the garden. The story has the significance of season personified. At the beginning of the story, the seasons bless the garden with pleasant weather until the giant sends the children away from his garden. Repulsed by the giant's unkindness, the spring season leaves the garden. The season's disfavor indicates that the giant's selfishness goes against the natural order and thus deserve punishment. So all this personification of inanimate objects suggests that it is much like a fairy tale. So these are the examples to say that the selfish giant is a fairy tale. So next question, the story makes the use of personification as one of the main figure of speech. Cite 3 examples of personification from the story. What is the significance of the season personified in the story? The story Selfish Giant makes the use of personification as one of the main figure of speech, which gives human qualities to non-human objects. In the story, the technique of personification has made non-human entities more vivid or helped the readers understand and sympathize with or react emotionally to them. Next question. The story can be read as a fairy tale where the children, the seasons, and the tree, the corner of the gardens, the snow, the wind, and the frost are all used as symbolism. Interpret those symbols. The story The Selfish Giant is a fairy tale. The story writer has adopted the approach of symbolism to teach the reader a moral lesson. The children symbolize innocence and love. Likewise, seasons represent hope, life, and death. The tree is a symbol of patience, whereas the corner of the garden stands for heaven. The snow, the wind, and the frost signify grief, sorrow, and discomfort. So this is a part of fairy tale because we find a giant talking to children and he's very selfish. We see inanimate objects speaking, favoring something else. So all these ingredients we can say are taken from fairy tale. Which figure of speech is used for winter, frost, snow, north wind, hail, and little child? Who is the little child compared to? As a fairy tale, the story is full of figure of speech. Both the methods of personification and symbols are used for winter, frost, snow, north wind, and hail. The little child is presented as a Christian symbol. He is compared to Jesus Christ. What is the main theme of the story? So the main theme of the story written by Oscar Wilde, The Selfish Giant, is unselfishness and love. At the beginning of the story, the giant is very selfish and cold towards the children and builds a high wall around the garden and puts a notice board to stop them. But later he realizes his mistake when the children stop coming to the garden and the garden never experiences the spring season until he allows them to play in his garden again. As he knows the meaning of love and sharing, the spring weather comes. Not only the giant brings happiness to children, but he also endures that he will get to heaven with his act of kindness. The giant's nature is associated with the nature of human beings. We really share our belongings to anyone, even if someone is needed. We are selfish to some extent. The story teaches us to share love to get love in return. We should not be selfish. Yes, and selfish is one of the vices a human being has. So we should not be selfish. That's the main theme of the story. So we should give up the feeling of selfishness, and we should extend love, and we should share our things.